What's the importance of building really good relationships within the tennis community that we all exist in? Right, well, that's a bit of a topic, isn't it? And what do I want to talk about today? So I am both a tennis player, a husband of a wife who plays tennis, and I'm a father of 3 children who play tennis. And they are all relatively, they're relatively new on their journey. They've been in a couple of years, and let's face it, they're on the starts of their journey, where my oldest is starting competition, and the other 2 are just developing into their love and passion of the sport. So as both a player and a parent and husband of players, one thing that you very quickly realize in this sport, I would imagine in most countries, but particularly here in the UK, is tennis is not the biggest community in each country. Tennis is a sport that, while it is very, very popular, when you actually start competing, you find that if you sort of think about tennis as a pyramid, the number of people who try it or maybe play at a recreational level is quite big. By the time you get up to competition, it's already filtered out, where actually the number of people competing is a relatively small number, particularly when you look at each of the age groups. Anyone who is a parent of children driving them around to tournaments know that, you can go around your local area. You're still going to be driving 15, 25, 30 miles, even if you're doing it locally. But then once you start really competing, you are going to be driving 50 miles, 75 miles, 100 miles, 100 miles plus when you get up to the higher grades. And you will see the same players, the same parents, the same referees, even some of the same coaches turning up. You will get to know them very quickly. We're talking within sort of 3, 4, 5 tournaments, you will start seeing the same people again and again, even though they might live 100 miles or more away from you. And what we see in tennis is that we are performers. We are, if we're playing singles, we are a player on a court representing ourselves. And the performance is both the sport we play, but it's a performance of our character. It's a performance of our personality, of who we are. What do I really mean by this? Essentially, you get to be seen, but also known by people far and wide based on the way you act on a tennis court. And that's not really the point I'm going to make so much today, because the point is how that links into building relationships and what relationships build into in tennis. So the number one thing, let's face it, who are we always wary of when we go to a tournament? It's that kid who just cheats really, really badly, whose line calls are abysmal. All of us parents have seen kids calling balls out that are a good sort of 40, 50 centimeters inside the line. It happens, maybe not to that degree so frequently, but we've all seen balls that are just nowhere near a line. It happens, right? Then of course you get the kids who are going to suddenly a 40-15 becomes a 15-40, a 3-1 lead becomes a 1-3 deficit all of a sudden. Now there's an argument there to say, what do a lot of kids do really badly? Call the score. We know that those sorts of children, adults do this too. It's amazing when you still see people who have, I've been in ITF Masters tournaments in over 45s, and you're seeing 2 grown men having arguments over incredibly bad line calls or about scores. It's not just kids. The point being that those people, they don't just do it once, they're doing it all the time. Your behavior, how you learn to play a match, and if you're learning to rely on bad line calls or adjusting scores, that becomes part of your game. Now, what it also does is you're on show, because everyone's watching. If you're at a tournament where there's a grass bank and you've got all the parents sitting up there watching the matches, you've got people watching you. And you've got everyone sitting and going, oh my God, did that kid really call that out? Or did that kid really change the score like that? And of course, we know as parents, we're not allowed to intervene. You've got to get the referee, but everyone knows the score. Everyone, sometimes literally, or, like the deal. And what you very quickly get to know is, if you're the first time in a tournament and then there's little Billy Smith that does this crazy line call, and you go, wow, did that kid really do that? And here's a parent that's seen him before, they go, oh yeah, that kid does that all the time. And then there's probably the parent either sitting in the car or, you know, standing far off, kind of cringing because they're like, oh my God, what's my kid doing? Let's take Billy Smith. You get to know Billy Smith pretty quickly. You go back to your club and say, oh, that was this kid. He was cheating. And someone goes, what was his name? Oh, Billy Smith. Ah, yeah, we've seen him before as well. Right. Point is, you very quickly get known. And I know of cases where you will get known by referees. All the referees talk to each other. They've all got groups that they participate in. They will talk about players. The coaches interact with those referees. The referees will know who the coach is of that player. The coach may get notified. And then other people will be aware that's happening. This community is not big. So, number one, yeah, there's a word of caution, which is, I would say more than other sports, you get known across a very wide area really quickly that you could drive to a tournament you've never been to 100 miles away and someone goes, you're Billy Smith, I've heard about your line calls. And the referee comes up to you and says, no, Billy, no bad line calls today. And you're like, how do you know me? You know? So this is just one illustration that is everyone who listens to this, is probably going to be going, yeah, I've seen and heard that before, right? Now, what I will say is I do notice that a lot of parents, because of this, very quickly learn to say, they tell their kids, if the ball's in, if the ball's on the edge of the line, it's in, right? Don't call the thing out if it's clearly in. If it's 40-15, you don't cheat, Call the score loudly. Try and be well behaved. Try and be polite. Tennis parents, though, and tennis players, I think, are relatively well behaved because of this fact. They know that it's a small community. But then what does that lead on to? What's the impact? Because where you see this happening probably more predominantly are the younger age groups. Where the kids are not mature, they're not really aware of these things, and all they're focused on is super hyper focused on winning, You still see it at older age groups, but I would say it probably happens more at younger age groups. Now, the trouble is, at that age, you don't necessarily rely on the tennis community that much. You have a coach, you have maybe a hitting squad you're in, maybe not even that if you're young. You see a lot of kids now are coach and a parent feeding tennis balls, and then you need the tournaments. And you're not, unless you get penalty points, you're literally allowed to enter a tournament, okay? As you get older, however, and this is where the relationship part comes in, to evolve as a tennis player, I would argue really from 11 plus, there's one thing that we all need in tennis to help us learn tennis, and that is a person on the other end of the tennis court who is willing, able, capable, and wants to help us develop as much as we want to help them develop, hitting partners. And these become more and more important as you get older. When you hit 14, 15, 16 and you start wanting to play real performance tennis, you are going to need a really good player down the other end of the court that will work with you, that you can work with, and who is willing to be there for an awful lot of hours. Or you need to have multiples of those hitting partners. It's why a lot of kids go into academies, in part. Yes, you've got the coaching set up. Yes, you've got the structure. Yes, you've got the support and the guidance. But what else do you have? You have a group of kids who are all doing the same thing. Some who'll be older, some who'll be younger, some who'll be better, some might not be quite as good. They have different playing styles, but you will be hitting with them day in, day out. They are essential to your development. Now, if you don't have the money to go to an academy and you're going to have to basically make it up yourself, you are going to need to develop relationships. And believe me, I already know from experience that very quickly, each parent will almost be keeping this little blacklist in the back of their head to say, that kid there, Billy Smith, you know what, when he comes along knocking and says, do you want to be my hitting partner? It's like, no chance, mate. No chance. You literally will get on a blacklist. It's hard enough anyway, because you see this sort of game going on with parents that says, unless you are significantly better than my child or your kid's better than my kids, I'm not going to let you hit with my kid because that might give your kid the opportunity to get better than mine. I mean, that absolutely exists, which, is a little bit mental because it goes back to you do need hitting partners who are both better and worse. You need other people to help you get better. So the one thing you really are going to have to be conscious of, you're going to have to rely on these relationships as you develop as a tennis player, which means if you don't create them, or if you put barriers in the way to developing them because of the way you act, you are going to find it hard to develop as a tennis player. I have seen older players who don't have hitting partners or can't get them enough, and literally they're there saying, I want to be a tennis player, but I can't find people to hit with, or the people I do hit with the level is lower, so I'm having to rein in my tennis. I can't play at a match level or beyond because the other person's just not capable. It's a real barrier. So what I would say the message here is, it's not just hitting partners. It can be things like you might need to say, carpooling, saying, if two of you are going to the same tournament, well, instead of both of us paying all that money to go, can't really afford it, you might need to rely on another parent. If you're going to a week-long grade 3, 2 or 1 or above ITFs, and you've got to go each day and you're like, well, I've got to work. Well, you might not be able to go each day. So again, you might have to rely on people to support you, and you have to support them equally. You need help and guidance and support. There'll be moments where the stress, the emotion, you need people to talk to be sounding boards, and likewise do the same in reverse. You need coaches who are willing to work with you, and believe me, some coaches will turn around and say, I'm not interested in coaching you because either your attitude is bad, your energy is bad, or I don't want to be associated with you. Because, and I've had a coach say this, where if there's a kid that misbehaves and they get known in the community, and maybe a referee comes back to the coach, it can be, particularly if it's stuff like line calling, score changing, or other funny stuff, people may think the coach is telling the kid to do that. And the coach says, I can't afford to be associated with you. That happens as well. So I think bottom line here, take it or leave it, right or wrong, advice or ignore. I don't think anyone's going to disagree that building relationships is a good thing. And in this community, we need to support each other. We need that relationship. And if you start doing funny stuff, or your kid does funny stuff, or your partner does funny stuff, if your doubles partner does funny stuff, that all comes back on you, and it affects your relationships. It will make it very hard. And I will absolutely say, by the time you do get to those older years, and yet unless your pockets are super deep and you can pay people for the privilege of their time, and even then, how do you know they're gonna, let's say you're paying a hitting partner, how do you know they're gonna try their hardest, or they're just saying, mate, I'll do enough to take your £10 an hour to be a hitting partner, but I'm not really gonna try that hard, just enough to earn the money. People going through the motions. This sport, it's an individual sport that relies on a community, and a community is based on relationships. Relationships are fundamentally built on, do I want to have a relationship with you? Do I want to have a connection? Do I want to have a friendship? Do I want to participate? Nothing here is mandated. Nothing is, you must go on the court and hit with them. If you don't want to, you can just say, sorry, I'm busy. Sorry, I'm not available. Sorry, I don't want to. So, bottom line for me, relationships are so important to us, not just because it's a one-way sort of always that thing of saying, well, I want it all for me, it's me, 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 but frankly as well, when we go to tournaments, when we go to clubs, when we're on the court, isn't it nice to actually feel like you're spending time with people you like, who are like-minded, who are doing things similar to you? It promotes that sense of well-being, because at the end of the day, only a very small proportion of us will ever be viable professionals who earn money. The rest of this, it's a passion sport. We do this because we love it. So again, final word to the wise is always invest in relationships. Remember, you are always on show, and remember, sort of think, does the way I act today in the long term, because this is a long-term thing, this is the long game, unless I believe that what I'm doing is vital for me to get ahead, actually, is it detrimental in the long term? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.